This is another book that I just completed, but it kind of, the inspiration kind of came right after the one about breath. And again, it had to deal with issues of dealing with grief. So I'll talk a little bit about my process. So I tend to work when I envision a book or a piece of art, I kind of have a flash of what the finished product might look like. So for both of these books, I was trying to work out how that might look. And my first thing, what I do is I get little scrap pieces of paper and I'd make kind of little mock-ups, because my thought process was figuring out, how am I going to bind this? Am I going to sew it? Is it going to be an accordion? Is it going to be, how complicated is it? So for this one, I knew I wanted something really long to kind of mimic, like the length of a breath, or this kind of gave me the idea of, what is it, when you're in a hospital, that kind of EKG reading, that kind of had that feeling of that. So for this book, I made little mock-ups this big to figure out the orientation. And for both books, it was really important for me to create kind of a rhythm in the story with the text, so that I would have a flow. And so there was a lot of thought put into the pacing and the wording. And then my next step, after I had the little mock-ups, I would do, I did a lot of testing of how I was gonna, like the process. And because I'm a printmaker, I wanted to do an edition of this, and I wanted to print it. So I went to, the thought was, do I carve this on wood, linoleum? And I ended up buying sheets of the Battleship linoleum, and then deciding the format so that I could use a sheet of paper and fold it in half. So kind of worked all this out, planning. And then it was also choosing the paper, and then the format of the book kind of had to go with the maximum width I could get with the paper. And then deciding color and all that. So anyway, these were relief rolled, cut aluminum, and I went with Cranfield inks that are, they're oil-based, but they're actually clean up with water and soap. So I wanted something really simple, because I didn't have access to a studio, and I was working just from my living room. So I ended up printing a whole lot of these, and with the junky sheets, I made a test book. But mainly I did a test book because I wanted to make sure that my pages lined up and that I had the right kind of binding. And I ended up choosing a binding called, it's kind of based on a flat, where the pages open flat. So it's kind of this loose accordion binding. And I could even do a future workshop and show people how I did this, but it was important for me that the book opened flat. So this was a test. And when I got all the kinks worked out, then I was ready to go for the final book. And what I had done is I had actually made some paste papers of kind of this gray loose texture, but I wasn't feeling 100% about it. And then I got online and I was looking at the decorative paper at Hollander's website, and I came across this really cool Japanese paper. It wasn't that expensive, and it had this kind of swirly pattern that I thought just was perfect for my book. For the book called Gripping, I also made like some tiny little mock-ups, and then I also, on some scrap paper, I made a mock-up because the folding had to be just right and the placement of the hands and the text would line up. So I always do like kind of a tiny little mock-up, and then I kind of go a little bit further, and then before going to the real thing, I kind of made a nicer paper mock-up, which just to kind of confirm my flow and text. And I think after doing this, it confirmed that I needed to move some of the text and the layering around. So it was really helpful to create this before jumping into the real thing. And I knew I wanted a book cover or book cloth, and I think it was right before I finished the last like ink drawing of these, I'd gone to the Talus book cloth website just to see if any of the book cloth would work out, and they had this great cloth called Duo, and it's actually got a brown and blue you can see it, brown and blue woven, weft and weave, weft and whatever. And anyway, the colors were perfect to go with the blue text and the walnut ink that I used. So anyway, to me, this made a really nice complete book from matching the materials and the idea of the book. If you can unmute me, if you have any specific questions about process.
Is that dog bothering you?
The dog?
Bothering you?
I like it. I'm at Joe's house because I don't have Wi-Fi in my house, so got her dog's company me. It's fine. I think he just wants to be
Loved up.
ear
Yeah.
scratched.
At first, I thought you had a twin to Joe's dog. I was like, wow, he looks just like Brad.
Can you talk more about those sheets of linoleum? And so did you have a sheet
yeah.
for each
Yeah.
line?
So I went on the I went and ordered this through Dick Blick, and they have different kinds of linoleum, and they have some that are backed with that burlap. This is just like a sheet, and I think it comes in I want to say like 15 by 20 sheets or something. Anyway, I was able to get four or five panels from one sheet because it's just cheaper. So with a sharp mat knife, I just cut these into strips. And I cut these just outside the sides of my paper so that I would have bleeding edges.
And then did you hand carve all the writing?
Yeah, so the way to get the
So neat.
Yeah.
you're not looking at it really close, but the way I did it was I actually mapped out my text on tracing paper, and then I flipped it over and then copied it backwards, and then I got some what is it, typewriter tracing paper, or yeah, the carbon paper, and carbon papered it through onto here and then cut it. It was actually relatively simple. I don't know if I'd recommend this product. I think there's different kinds. This might have been the one by the company called Richardson or Richson. And I found that even cleaning it off, the ink kind of stains it. And just know that not all products are quite created equal. So you might try something. I've had better luck on the product called Gomuban even, but I think you can get Gomuban through, what is it, that woodcut site in Seattle. Does anybody know the name of that place?
Think of it. Yeah.
If I think of it, I'll let you know, but it's another, a lot of people like people who do Japanese wood carving order from the supplier. I think they're out of Seattle, and they sell Gomuban, which is kind of like,
Is it Claims,
yeah,
Maria?
McLean's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something called Gomuban that I've used, Gomuban, and it's kind of like linoleum, but I like the way it takes ink and carves up better than what I found in this product.
I found that gray product is really stiff, so it's easy to kind of make one of those slips that you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So,
Gomuban takes the cut
nicer.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, deep down, I'm a real thrift cheapy person, so of course
If you have.
it's like I have to learn not to go by price sometimes alone.
So Maria, are you printing the white text on dark paper, or are you printing the dark background?
Oh, okay. Yeah, good question. So I wanted to make sure that I had a gradation from white ink to gray, going into black to gray. But if you can see in the beginning part here, I inked this plate that went from white to a middle gray. But on the sheets, the front and the back, where it goes into white, I actually roll toned the ends in a very, very light gray, so that when the white printed, or when I printed the white over it, you could actually see it. It wouldn't totally dissolve. So actually, you know, when you look at this book, it looks quite simple, but it was kind of subtly complicated to do what I was trying to do. I think because it's so simple that if I didn't get it right, I wouldn't get the same kind of messaging and reading that I wanted from the final book. And things like the carving, I had to print a lot because I had to make sure that, like, when this line here, it needed to line up all across through. And like sometimes it's just I was using a little tabletop press, and once you lay a sheet down, I was kind of making little pencil mark registrations, but sometimes they're off. So like, I feel like if the perfectionist side of me, I can't judge this book too harshly. So I just had to kind of aim for doing the best I could. And I only ended up getting one book out of all the pages I printed. And my goal is when things open up again and I have access to a studio, that I will edition this book. Yeah, so anyway.
How many actual sheets of paper? Is one double fold spread?
Yeah, so this is actually, this is one sheet of paper, and each sheet has a 1/2 inch that was tabbed into the next. So let me pick it up like this. It's, you know, it's an accordion that just all comes out like that.
Ah, got it.
But they're all tabbed a 1/2 inch behind the next to connect. The binding was actually relatively simple. I didn't even know the name of this, but I can even maybe send, there was a crafty woman that posted this binding that she did on YouTube, and I watched it a couple times just to kind of nail it down what she was doing. And this is just book cloth, basically book cloth with with some rice paper, I think, underneath it. So it's actually a really thin kind of hinge. And then there's a little spine with a very thin sheet of mat board holding it. So anyway, it's something that hopefully maybe next, there's any way that people get gathered together, it would be really cool to share this binding, people to actually see it. I know it's different seeing it than actually holding it and looking at it.
It's very elegant, Maria.
Yeah, I think because it's so simple, it
Mhm.
it definitely has a kind of elegance to it. Yeah, and plus
I think
being like neutral colored, you know.
I think I've seen that binding in a book that I have. I'll see if I can grab it really quick. But I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I've seen that where it's like the book cloth is going over the boards, but it doesn't glue down to the accordion
Right.
backside folds, but it does have like a board spine that you have to cut a specific way, and it lays in there, and then you lay the book boards in and then fold, the book cloth over, and then
Right.
you use the ends of the accordion as your end papers. Is that how you kind of did it?
Kind of. I've seen, this is like one of 3 different versions I've seen on this one. I've seen one where it's hard to explain, but this book cloth, it's hard to explain, but I've done both of them. This one is just a more looser version, not as tight fitting, but what's
Yeah,
nice
now
about,
you're holding it like that. I think the one in the book, the book boards, the front and back covers kind of, they didn't, like when you're opening yours all the way up, they kind of almost touch.
yeah,
But because it's an accordion, it's looser, so they can fold back in. And I think the one that I've seen in the book, which I'll go grab here in a second, I think when it's open up flat lay, they communicate with the edge of the spine, not with each other. So that's interesting. That is a little more
Yeah.
complicated. I'll see if I can grab that book.
okay.
Is that called the spring back binding?
I know there's one called Sewing on Boards. This one is, there's some website I follow that it's I think a bookmaker in Holland that designs bindings, and then he sells the kits, and they're really expensive. And this is one that they put out, I think, a year ago. And I was just studying their little diagrams and figured out how they made it. And I had to do a lot of testing to make sure, because the fitting is very precise. But what I like about them both and this one is that I love the flat, the open. It's so nice to have a book that it's so important for, this to be held flat versus, only getting something this far. And so, yeah, so I didn't even know the name, but I can send you guys the link to the video that that crafty video. And she was making like a photo album journal, and but it's like the last half hour, she kind of gets into the guts of how she did it. It's like, oh, that's really cool. I got to try it.
I think it's this book.
Yeah, I have that book.
It has a similar binding, but like I said, I don't think it doesn't, it's more like it communicates with the spine where it's open flat. But I'm trying to look for it now. If I find it, I'll tell you.
Alice Vinson gave a class on this kind of binding, and I don't remember what she called it, but it actually is not a very difficult binding to do. And it just pulls out and goes back in. So it is basically the same as the binding.
It's similar to that, yeah.
And this is very small.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is
letter binding.
It's really fun to do. And these are just little lino cuts that were tabbed and put together just like you did your book.
Right. I think accordion has
more straightforward. It doesn't have the complexity that yours has.
I think there's a lot of with accordion, there's a lot of different ways you can bind it. And
yes. But it's a very fun binding to do too. Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot, but it's fun seeing a bigger book.
I think that could be a fun future workshop of just variations on that kind of flat open binding.
Yeah, and it's not, like I say, it's a straightforward, there's nothing complex about it.
Right,
really.
right. Yeah.
And It's just fun to do.
Yeah.
Oh, I see you have a cat also behind.
Oh, it's Joe's cat. Hey, Meow.
So I think I was mistaken about that sheet, that this book used it for an accordion book, but they're calling it a flat back case and they're using it for a multi-section book block. But it's kind of a similar idea, but not exactly. They show an accordion binding, but it's just basically, you know, the kind of accordion that can like open all the way up and it has the two covers, but it's not held on the back to keep it from kind of exploding out.
Yeah, yeah.
Lynn, could you show the cover again?
Sure.
Thank you.
That's a good book craft.
Who's the author of that book? I haven't seen that one before.
Heather Weston, Westen. And
Thank
I
you.
believe I got it from Amazon, of course. The book, the
Yeah.
everything place.
Awesome.
And then let me show you the binding on this book so you can see it.
Oh.
It's basically the pages they're accordioned, but you know, they're folded in different widths. And what I did is before I cased it in, I took the center of the book and I got some good sturdy Asian paper and I basically glued it together just on the ends. So kind of keeping it really tight. And then I wrapped that with some book cloth, like a faux spine. And then I cased it in. So it has a really nice finished look to it, but it's actually a really quick way to bind it. And the way because I put it together, I wanted to make sure that those pages couldn't spill out because it was really important to keep everything, you know, kind of really tight and into the spine. So, you guys
I
have any
love the
questions about,
movement.
I don't know, about anything else about these before I hand it over to Joe?
I love the movement of that second book, the way the pages are shorter and it creates a nice music as you turn the pages. So
Yeah,
that's
thanks.
really nice, really beautiful.
To me, that was the like centrality of the book, is to kind of create that turn the page, but what was left kind of, you
Mhm.
have a residue of something continuing, and then the final is that it kind of all reads as one.
It's fabulous.
Kind of with the theme of like letting go too, of like kind of bringing it, having pieces, and then at the end everything kind of comes open. So
Nice.
They're both beautiful, Maria, just fantastic.
thanks. So I hope I hope you guys are all working on books for Imagine. I feel like we shifted the title and I feel like it's open now to like whatever you can imagine. That's it. So
Can you guys talk about why the title shifted? Because maybe it was talked about in a meeting and I wasn't there, but it was like 1 month it was Exhale and the next month it was Imagine. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What happened with that?
Well, let's see. My memory is that Exhale seemed a little too connected to COVID and masks and, you know,
Yeah.
all that. And it was actually another show that we had lined up for Paperworks was called, what was that one? That was at Pima that also had a title. that was Uncontained.
yeah.
So those were two titles we made before the COVID virus, and then it just seemed like we had to let it go and move on. And
Kind of too creepy, kind of too related.
too weird, yeah. So anyway, but I actually love the title Imagine. I love the phonetic spelling, and I just recently looked up John Lennon's song Imagine, and he said in one of his interviews, he said he was inspired by Yoko Ono's artist book, Grapefruit. Do any of you know that?
I
Grapefruit.
saw a documentary about that, and I went and looked up the book, and it was like that is a wild book.
It is a wild book, but it's a wonderful book. So if you ever get a chance, or if we ever get together in person again, I would be happy to share this with everyone, because it is, it has, it's like all these, it's almost like, people do those 100-day exercises. This is full of like ideas and songs and thoughts, and totally bizarre. And I don't know exactly, but it's just using your imagination. And it was considered an artist book by some people, in that she hung it in New York as an installation, a wall of these squares, and then had it bound. But it's not like, you can see, it's a regular commercially made book. But after I had read about that, I realized I had ordered this a while back, like when I was doing a presentation on books. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this. It's so bizarre. But it is a really nice book. And it's
Can you
full
show
of,
us a few pages from the interior?
oh yeah. Let's see here. So on some of them, she has little drawings. I don't know, can you see that?
Yeah. Wow.
And then, let's see, a lot of them are just like an idea. I'm going to show you some of the drawing ones first. But some of them say stuff like, there's like little chapters. One's for musical things, one's for art things, paintings actually. And her paintings are like, hang it, let's see, a smoke painting, light canvas, or a finished painting with a cigarette at any time for any length of time. See the smoke movement. The painting ends when the whole canvas or painting is gone. And then painting, to be slept on, hang it in after sleeping on it for more than 100 nights. I mean, it's just like every page is just some totally bizarre thing that you would be like, oh my God. It's fun and it's imaginative. And I guess that would be why it had inspired the Imagine song in some ways, because it's just so out of the box. But I thought that was kind of cool in relationship to our title for our show, and that it was related to artist books, which I thought was very nice. So I'm going to talk about one book that I made this summer, and it's called Remaking. And this book was, I'll pull this back down. This book was kind of, the writing was after the George Floyd incident, and I felt like we'd kind of repeated, and we were still repeating a really awful process of like a racial bias and racial extermination. And it kind of hit me in the solar plexus. And I thought, I'm going to just start writing about it. So I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote 8 or so poems. And the one poem that I ended up making this book from is called, the idea behind all this was that I had thought that maybe somehow there had been a mistake with humanity, some fatal flaw. The premise being that, if we were created by a God, on his day of rest, he kind of lost his momentum and maybe fell out of the groove and didn't quite have it together when he made us. And because at the same time as that, I ended up going out to the Gila wilderness. But the remaking poem that I wrote is, my idea was, okay, maybe we could go back and start again, a do-over. Let's remake humanity. How would this work? Drinking in earth, splashing back into pliable mud, uncover what went wrong, steadily hold a light to it. Trickiness, hubris, pride, fear, and judgment. Reshape the mass, carefully form a new creature, one who has earth under her nails, leaves in her hair, kindness in each heartbeat. So that was the poem that inspired the book of Remaking. And the first one I did, this is kind of the mock-up, is I knew I wanted to do a stab binding, and I had at the same time I had gone out to the wilderness for a backpacking trip for a week, and I had just immersed myself in nature for a week. So I came home and without pre-planning, I carved 24-inch square woodcuts, and 4 of them. And I knew I was going to print off of them. So I just started creating the book with that. And the words changed a little bit into the book, but I wanted to get the kind of the gist of it, the holding, the trickery, the reshaping, the reforming. Let's see here. Earth. I guess because we're out of earth. And drinking. Let's see, this is a little hard to turn. Splashing. Heartbeat. And when I made it initially, I made it very soft covered, and I thought that's nice, but it didn't really hold up very much for me. And for some reason, the black ink seemed a little too harsh. So I then switched to a hardcover and tried other kinds of bindings because I didn't particularly like this stab binding. So my whole thing is I love making up new bindings. So I just play around with them. So that was my newest binding. And then I was off with a gray ink instead of a white for the words. And then I ended up making the finished, well, that's kind of a finished book too. But I actually could have made these really big, like 24-inch books, but I was limited by the size of the paper I was using. So this is the final version of the book. And
Beautiful.
and I wish I had bigger paper that I could have worked with, but that's okay. And it's really sheer. And I thought about getting an extra paper between each, but I did like the kind of the ghost of the print on the back showing through.
What is the paper?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask that. It's Hanamule Sumi E paper. It's one I use for cyanotypes. I heard about that. It's this guy. And you can find it on Sumi E. It's really a nice, it takes a lot of water, so they use it for cyanotypes quite a bit.
Hey, Joe, hold that up again.
Oh,
I
sorry.
couldn't write fast enough.
I'm sorry.
It's
Okay.
gorgeous. Hane.
Hanamule Sumi E. And it's a white paper, so, but it takes water really well, so they use it for the cyanotypes because you have to soak your image so long. But yeah, I just worked off of my big prints and took different sections of it to print on each page and created the books that way. Yeah. Anyway, that is the book I have. And I wanted to say that normally I prefer to use silkscreen or something, but I didn't want to take the time to figure out how to do silkscreen at home without a darker, because I'd probably want to get the words with a photo emulsion on a silkscreen. So instead of waiting for access to a studio again, like I usually use the silkscreen studio at Pima Community College, I thought, well, I'm going to just actually find a paper that will go through the through my printer. It's a laser printer. And this paper went through very well. I had to do the words before I did I had to get the words on one side before I got the print on the other, because this oil, even though when I let it dry, it was too tacky to go through. It kept gumming up and messing up the printer. So I had to organize how I was going to print it and get all the words in first. So
That's beautiful.
and I wanted to show this, which is these are some cyanotypes I've been working on of magnified kind of water droplets. And I do want to make a book out of these. But this is also the same paper, the Honey Mule paper, and you can see that like on this one in particular, you can see that it's a nice white paper. Really good. So any other questions?
Your
Oh,
book
what's-
on baking. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Joe, what's the name of that company again? Hana, my,
Oh, Hana Mule. I actually ordered this through Amazon.
okay, thank you.
And it's nice because it will go through your printer.
Uh-huh.
I found there's a smoother side and a fibery side. So definitely run your ink on the smoother side. Because
Okay.
the fibery sides seem to like create glitches where the ink on the printer would run and get on the paper like in little lines or dots. So
Okay, thank you.
I was thinking that your book on remaking reminds me of the Maya myth. I don't know if you've ever read about the Maya creation myth, but they tried 3 times because they weren't happy with how human beings were. And the first time they made human beings, the gods made human beings with mud, and then that didn't work. So they made them with wood, and that didn't work. And then they remade them with corn, and that worked. And I was thinking that your remaking is, the imperfection of human beings. It's a cool idea.
well, when I was doing it, I realized pretty quickly it was not a creation story, but a recreation story.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's beautiful.
So I guess that will end the formal part of this in terms of presenting. But did anyone, Anita, do you want to talk about like where we go from here as a group, or because we didn't want to like assume anything, but we kind of wanted to mostly be there for each other so that if you had questions about a book in progress, you could bring it and ask for ideas, or if you just wanted to show each other our work, that would be good. And then maybe ask, I don't know, we didn't want to assume we knew how this should go. It was like, let's as a group maybe recreate this.
Yeah, and am I muted or unmuted? I don't know can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, great, okay. I just, think that it's maybe a free floating format for this group so that it can evolve if we want to keep it going over the months and serve a purpose that may actually change as we go along, with kind of the idea that we are kind of focusing on the show at the Poetry Center for next spring. And also any thoughts, that might come up about that. And I'm basically just saying what Joe just said. So just to keep it kind of open and serve the needs of whoever wants to come. Joe, I did find the original list for everybody else too. I did find the original list this morning, so I can email everybody, but of course, several of you are here today. So, that's good. And so, yeah, I think it's just up to us each time to kind of decide how we float it. I mean, I do think we kind of need a little bit of a plan for the following month, just to keep it on track a little bit. So it's not
I
just.
like the idea of it being a little more open. I know the first couple of meetings that we did, God, when was that? Before 2019, before the pandemic, it seemed a little more directed. And I think Joe and I had a little email conversation, not so long ago, where I expressed the feeling of if for an exhibit, it's nice to have like a theme that's open and loose and not have too much direction, because then I think the freshness and spontaneity and original ideas kind of get influenced too much. And I hope that this more open format, I already like it better. I already feel like it will be a little more free for people to, you know, have inspiration, but not too much guidance. I guess that's what I'm trying to get out. It's hard to express in words, but I think creativity is better if people are kind of, you're given like a little prompt, let's just say, the new name of the exhibit. I really like that. And that's kind of makes it a little more open for people to interpret how they wish. But to have this kind of forum where, you know, if you want to bounce ideas off people or see what other people are doing, it's kind of nice because you're not too influenced by looking at what someone else is doing next to you. Like, that's the one thing I've found about Zoom workshops I've been taking. At first it's like, well, you kind of miss being able to just sit there and chat with people. But then again, you're not so influenced by looking at what someone else is doing and thinking, oh, look what she's doing. Man, mine really sucks. I wish I could make something like her. Or, you know, or feel like if you want to go rogue, which I just did in a Zoom workshop where we just finished it today, and we were supposed to do something that I didn't want to do. So I was like, do that. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go rogue and no one will know. And no one, I had a really good time.
I agree with you. And I think one of the things that I thought about in opening up this subject for the show is that there are a tremendous amount of very experienced bookmakers in paperworks, as well as artists, that really have their own direction of what they're working on concept wise, and you know, for sometimes even years to work on one sort of thing. So I think it is important. So I totally agree with you. And I think we're on the right track to open it up. And yeah.
I completely agree. And I wanted to ask a real basic question. This is nitty gritty. I wanted to ask about the physicality, the actual exhibit itself. As I remember in the beginning, there was some kind of allusion made to the fact that there was less wall space or more wall space. Yes. Tell me what you're looking for. Are you looking for things that will go on the wall, or are you, no? Okay, thank you.
I can speak just a little bit to this. What happened with the pandemic is the Poetry Center lost their attempt to get all new display cases. Everything is on hold. However, on their wall space, they now have large like video screens and stuff. So there is no wall space like there was 5 years ago. So, and we may still be dealing next spring with a limited amount of display cases if they still do, if the U of A still doesn't go for purchasing and installing the new display cases. But I think that we can handle it in a lot of different ways, this limited space. The exhibit lasts for a long period of time. One thought that I had is that we can fill the display cases, and then halfway through the show, we can put on some more artist books if we need to. But there's a lot of different ways to do this. So I think that however it is, we're creative. We're all creative people, that we can use what we've got and create a show that's going to be pretty exciting, however we do it. Mm-hmm. Also, we were thinking, you know, of having a day where we can take the books out of the display cases and people can handle them and really look at them, which I think is a much more exciting thing than having them under glass.
And Krista, they had specifically asked for books, not wall pieces.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So. Will there be a size limitation on the books?
Yeah, I think it's right now we left it at 15 inches by 15 inches by 15 inches, which is pretty big. Okay. Yeah. So we'll see.
Is that the exact size they need to be, Joe, or is that like a max?
That's the max. So anything below that would work. Good question.
Minute. They can be little.
Yeah.
And what about more than one book?
Yeah, I think on our call that we have on the website, it says an entry fee of $35 for 1 to 3 entries. Now, I know that might seem like a lot for you all, but we're also trying to work on getting follow-up exhibits so that we could move this book show right from the Poetry Center out to Karen in Silver City. She's given us a tentative, if she's still in business by then, kind of yes. And maybe there's another space we could take it to after that. So we thought it would be really nice to have the show that could go places. So one of the things we hadn't really said on that call was, to be aware that if you do a book and it's really fragile, we might opt not to send it, or we might ask you to make a little bit hardier book, because fragile ones tend to come back pretty roughed up. So,
We would, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say that this would be a good place to ask any of those kind of questions for people. So if someone's interested in and says, oh, what's it all about? You might have them come and ask us the questions, or come to one of these gatherings. But also things like, I spoke with Jim Cowell and I asked him about helping us photograph artwork. And he's going to write something up for Paperworks and see if he could figure out how to do it on a Zoom call. So that's something we can advertise, to the general public, but you all are having it first here. So yeah, I mean, we'll try to, keep you informed of what's going on that way.
And another idea that we have had is so that whoever enters this show, because $35 is quite a bit, and nobody likes to be rejected, let's face it, that we would make a zine, so that everybody's work who enters the show, I'm not saying, not the whole book, of course, it can only be a little book, but everybody could be represented in this zine as well as named, and say the title of the piece somehow, so that it's not just a few people that can show their work here. We're trying to incorporate something so that a whole lot of members, if they want to enter, can, and their work will be seen in one form, in one way or another.
Anita, are you talking about that the zine would be included in the exhibit itself? So it would be like a group, trying to think how to word it. It wouldn't be a group exhibit if everyone who entered was not in it, but it would be like a group, I hate to call it project, I hate that word, for things like this.
Yeah,
But
I think the idea is that, not make a catalog either, not a catalog. So that we're trying to go a little bit more 2021-ish. And so
you're saying like an e-zine or a physical?
No, we're thinking of physical.
Okay.
Now the Poetry Center also, for every show that they have now, they do a video showing the books, talking about the books. And this is done by the Poetry Center. It's very professional looking. So that's another piece of how these books will be shown and be available, online and for anyone to see in a different place other than Paperworks.
Hey, Anita, someone yesterday at the Paperworks meeting read your wonderful, write-up about the concept of Imagine. Is there a way you could share that with the group?
Yeah, that was me, Anita. I read your little paragraph.
Oh, thank you. I was indisposed due to my vaccine.
Oh.
Well,
on Thursday. I didn't expect that, but it lasted about 3 days.
Wow.
It's okay.
But
Yes.
Vicky, I could send this to everyone too, but we asked Anita to write this up for us, which she did such a fantastic job. We're going to add that into the official call when we get all the details of how this. We've just kind of done an updated call, which was a little brief one with just the facts, but this information I could easily send to all of you if you want that.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
What about having Anne put it on the website?
Great. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do that just now. I mean, I'll get it to her later today. Right
Also, Laura shared her book on saguaros yesterday at the Paperworks meeting, which was
Beautiful.
really wonderful. And I really enjoy seeing, the books that you've talked about today and how Maria showed us, the binding technique. And it's so interesting, I think, to hear people walk through their process. That really helps me because I feel like that's kind of the most difficult about getting my concept to the final product, all of that kind of thinking and prototyping along the way. So that I think would be really helpful during our Zoom meetings if we could just see a few people's books that they created just in the past and kind of walk us through how they got from the beginning to the end.
And I think I mentioned Anita and Sherry that you two might talk about your collaborative thing next month. Your book that you're going to work on. Maybe I'm a little in advance. Maybe it's 2 months away, but I mentioned that.
We collaborated
Yeah,
several
I think
times on several things.
Okay.
I think the other thing is that it can be interesting is to really watch a project. I'm sorry, there, bad word maybe, but a artist book starting from the development. Just, okay, 5 minutes. Here's what happened this month. Now here's what it looks like and what we decided to do with it. And here is where it is. And then finally it's going to be done. To watch people's process. I am so process oriented and I so love to know about people's processes. And Maria, the patience that you have with your process just really struck me today. Just so there's different ways I think we can do this, that we don't have to have a finished product necessarily, but we can follow somebody's process over, a few months of what's happening.
Well, we need to start wrapping up because we're running out of time. I am going to, if everybody's okay with that, post this up on the YouTube page. So, if you have people that didn't come and for whatever reason, maybe they didn't think it'd be worth their while, but you think that it might be and you want to refer them to it, at least they won't be lost as to what we're doing. And, we can take it down whenever, but I think it would be a good thing if we had access to it, especially since my memory sucks and I may want to refer back to something that someone did. So anyway, I think that's what my plan is, and I will get that up within the next day or so. And send
I have a series of chapbooks, poetry chapbooks that someday, if you need somebody to share something like that, I would be happy to share them.
Wonderful. Do we want to decide who's going to share next week so we kind of can anticipate that? And
next month.
I mean, next month, excuse me. It's a monthly event. Yes. Would you be willing to talk about some of your collaborations? Sherry and Anita?
We need to talk before we say that. Don't you think?
I think we probably could speak about how our concept is developing a little bit next time. Not a long time, certainly not, but we could certainly let you know. That'll get us going, Sherry.
Yes, it would.
And then maybe follow up with Laura talking about her chapbooks or something.
Perfect.
Sure.
Okay.
Great.
And then we'll just have questions and discuss other things. But I think it would be nice if you had a project that you're beginning to work on, like me showing you the cyanotypes. I don't know how that book's going to form, but I showed you that. If you have just something you want to show us, like, this is where I'm going, bring it next time. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could.
I love the cyanotypes, Joe. They were cool.
Okay.
We
Look
could
forward
call
to see
next
what they'd
week's
be.
meeting, like, share your starts. So that kind of gets everybody's juices going, like, oh, they already started on something. I need to, wherever you're at, whether it's just an idea or you got a sketch or anything beyond.
I love that idea of sharing an idea or a start and then seeing how it evolves, because so often we start here with this idea and then we end up way over here, and that's a really fun process to follow. Right now, all I have is just a zillion ideas.
Good.
That's a start.
That's a good start.
Okay, girls, I am going to
End the
leave-
conversation.
end the conversation and I
Thank
will.
you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you guys for sharing your
Thanks,
work.
everybody.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
See you all
Everybody.
next
Enjoy the
month.
rest of the weekend.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.